calendar we use today. All other people had calendars based on other things other than astronomy. This Egyptian calendar is the very foundation of our present calendar. Thales, the Greek sage, received his scientific education in Egypt, as did all of them. As early as 4200 BC, received his scientific education in Egypt, where the annual calendar of 365 days had been known as early as 4200 BC. That said that by 4200 BC, which is 6,200 years ago, they already had the calendar in place. And where the Great Bear, a constellation on the boreal hemisphere, was well and truly identified by the Egyptians, who called it by that name right there, which I cannot pronounce, Meskhushut. Okay? Of course, the pyramids of Giza was built before we had any telescopes. And by the way, talk about the Dogon people. The Dogon people talked about the star Sirius. And for years, the European scientists said, those people crazy. Them Africans in Mali can't know anything about no planet. We can't see the damn thing. Well, in the last 50 years, we developed a telescope large enough to see Sirius. And exactly where the Dogon said it was, it's doing exactly what they said it would do.
That's only because some spaceman came from outer space and gave it.
Well, yeah, Carl Sagan and some other folks said, this stuff is too important to be done by Africans. Folk came from outer space and did it.
Dogon people spoke of what you say
The star Sirius.
Star Sirius.
Yeah. The ancient architects may have known the mean length of the Earth's orbit around the sun, the average distance of the Earth from the sun, the specific density of the planet, and thus the weight of the planet. Think about that. The precession of the equinoxes, which defines the current era as the age of Pisces, the acceleration of gravity, and the speed of light. In fact, as a simple, precise, and virtually indestructible surveying instrument, the compass point of the pyramid is so finely tuned to the north that modern compasses use it for a reference. The pyramid's location also serves as the geodetic marker for the geography of the ancient world, being located at the geometric center of the Earth's landmass. If you add up all the landmass on the planet, the pyramids are situated at the geographic center of the landmass. Sorry, I'm trying to skip anything. Okay. The Great Pyramid also incorporates in its sides and angles. Yes, sir.
Could you go back for a second?
Sure.
It says that in fact, as a simple, precise, and virtually, it says that as a simple, precise, and virtually indestructible surveying instrument, the compass point of the pyramid is so finely tuned to north that modern compasses use it for reference. So my question is, what is this this compass?
The pyramids are situated such that the 4 points point directly north, south, east, and west. And what they're saying is that the north, the point that points to the north, is so precise that modern compasses are checked against it.
So the pyramid itself, they're saying, is the compass.
Yes.
Okay.
So then why is the prime meridian in Greenwich Village?
Because they moved it. The prime meridian, we measure time on the planet from Greenwich, England. That's because the English were in charge and they moved it from Egypt to Greenwich, England. You can go to Greenwich, England, there's a line down the middle of the road. And on this side, you in Tuesday, step across, you in Wednesday. Well, that's not crazy. You have to measure time some kind of way, from some point, And so if you start with Greenwich, England, or you start with Washington, D.C., you say, here's where time begins, 24 hours later, as the Earth turns around, it comes back to the same point, that's the next day. The point is that if this is the new day, you step across, you're still in the old day. You're in the old day till the sun comes back around, crosses that line again.
To me, that sounds like then time don't have no meaning for real. if they gonna say if you on that side of the line and it's Tuesday, and if you over there, then
No, time has a meaning.
Monday.
It takes the planet 24 hours to rotate. You got to have some point be the marker as to where the day's going to start. It can be anywhere. Whatever point you choose, that's the only point you can use. Now, it used to be Egypt. When the Europeans were in charge, they moved to Greenwich, England. And so now we use what's called GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. That means that Greenwich, England is the marker point on the planet for when a day begins and when a day ends. Listen.
Can you talk about the was it the Aztec calendar? I went to a thing.
I'm not really able to talk about that. No. Go ahead. Tell us what you know.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I went to a program at the Rock Creek Park Nature Center. And the guy, he was doing a presentation about stars and how Africans who were enslaved were using the stars to escape slavery.
Sure.
Somebody at the end of it brought up something about the Aztec calendar, and he said, I think that's the most advanced calendar, the most perfect calendar, or something that they did was just it, and that just struck me as strange.
It is strange that we don't use it. We're still using the one that came out of Egypt. But you said something very important. Along with, there's so many things we do not know these days. Our ancestors, those who were enslaved, had been trained from birth to understand the star patterns, such that they could travel coast to coast with no map, because they always knew where they were in respect to the stars. Part of how slaves escaped in this country, they were told follow the North Star. Get your orientation with the North Star and head north. They didn't have compasses, but they got free. The Great Pyramid also incorporates in its sides and angles the means for creating a highly sophisticated map projection of the northern geohemisphere, and as such correctly incorporates the geographical degrees of latitude and longitude. It is also a celestial observatory from which maps of the stellar hemisphere can be accurately drawn, and along with the other two Giza pyramids replicates the exact positions of 3 stars in the belt of the constellation of Orion. Finally, there is an example of the golden spiral whereby the 3 pyramids and the Sphinx are interlocked and thus situated by design. Those things are not there randomly. They were placed there where they were placed for a reason. The hemispherical map projection is particularly intriguing. The apex of the pyramids, for example, corresponds to the geographical pole, while the perimeter of the pyramid corresponds to the equator, both in proper scale. Each flat face of the pyramid was designed to represent one curved quarter of the northern hemisphere, a spherical quadrant of 90 degrees. That means that they were able to take a spherical object and reduce it to a plane surface. That's not easy to do. This is more difficult than one might imagine. For in order to project a spherical quadrant into a flat triangle correctly, the arc or base of the quadrant must be at the same length as the base of the triangle, and both must have the same height. We're talking about high mathematics, I'm not going to go through all this because I want to go to another thing I have that makes it even clearer. Just so I get there, I was told that the columns came out of Greece and Rome. And now we can go back and we can see, of course.
See the one that they try to do.
Yeah. All they did was give it fancy names, what they already found in Kemet. I'll touch on this. Finally, in the early description of the pyramids, the measurements were in cubits, where the Great Pyramid's apothem was 358 cubits and the base 440 cubits. If one divides 356 cubits by half of the base, which is 220, we again find the golden mean. The golden mean is a very special number in science. The golden mean, 1.618. There are 2 very important constants on the planet. One is pi, and one is phi. The golden mean is 1.618. That's phi. That number occurs over and over and over again in nature. It's now named after an Italian named Fibonacci, who did studies on that, Fibonacci numbers. It's clear from looking at the pyramids that the ancient Egyptians not only understood the constant phi, but also the constant pi, which is 3.1418, etc. And you'll see that in a minute.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Golden mean is what? Both of those together?
No, the golden mean is 1.618.
And the pie.
And pi is 3.1418, I think. These are two very important constants on the planet. The Fibonacci numbers, the numbers of petals on a flower, the numbers of rabbits born to a parent pair of rabbits, all these things for some odd reason fall in certain parameters that are defined by the Fibonacci numbers, what's now called the Fibonacci numbers, which is obvious that the Egyptians understood thousands of years ago because they incorporated into the building of the various monuments, particularly the pyramids.
Could you elaborate on that? You said that all those different things, like the rabbits and all of that. Like, for example, how does that work with the numbers?
I wasn't going to cover that today. Didn't go back and review it as well as I wanted to. Let me do this. Let me hold off on that till next time, because I do have a display on that. It's not simple, but I do have a display on that, and it's an important question, because again, it talks about the fact that until I had studied this particular subject, I didn't know there was something called the Fibonacci numbers. I didn't know that things on the planet followed a certain correspondence over and over and over again, because we have not been taught to look at things like that, to tune in. But they tuned in and they knew it existed. And next time I'll do a little explanation of Fibonacci numbers, because I do have one at home.
How you spell the name? I can't
F-I-B
F-I-B.
O-N-A-C-C-I. F-I-B-O-N-A-C-C-I. He's an Italian, who, by the way, figured out these numbers by studying, guess what? The pyramids. Okay? The original drawing for the Lincoln Memorial was this right here. It was a pyramid. They rejected it, instead just built this part right here. But all these type of buildings came out of Kemet. You know, the statue of Abraham Lincoln, the same as this one right here. Just copies. The Sphinx, by the way, is usually not listed as being one of the ancient wonders of the wonders of the ancient world, primarily because it's even older than the ancient world. We've now figured out that the Sphinx is probably about 13,000 years old. Yeah, 13,000 years old.
And the pyramids?
The Sphinx is older than the pyramids.
13,000 compared to...
About half that. Now, I spoke about, this comes from work of a guy named Swallow de Lubix, who I mentioned before. What he shows here is that in the construction of the arches in Egypt, that they had to understand the value of pi, 3.1416, because they incorporated in the measurement of the arcs, the side versus the top. So in addition to understanding the constant phi, which is the 1.618 one before, they also understood pi, 3.1416, which is involved in measuring circles and all kinds of other solid forms.
You said 3.1.
3.1416 to 4 digits. You can carry out as many digits as you want to. But those of you who went to high school and whatnot and had geometry and whatnot, you came across the constant pi. You were not told that the Egyptians understood pi. This is a drawing of a pharaonic figure, which again is one of the ways they represented the measurements of it. I'm sorry. Sure. Which is one of the ways they measured the 3, 4, 5 triangle that Pythagoras was given credit for. This pharaonic figure, first of all, his penis is in the wrong place. And so erect, which means it has nothing to do with sex. You know, it had to do with the measurements. When you look at the various measurements of that figure incorporates the formula for the 3, 4, 5 triangle. Now, this is what I'm trying to read. The Great Pyramid of Khufu or Cheops has 4 sides at perfect right angles, resting on 4 perfectly leveled sockets, with the sides perfectly aligned to the cardinal points of the vertical height in the same proportion to the circumference at the base as does the radius of a circle have to its circumference. The measurement angles and levels are accurate to the same degree as the grinding of modern eyeglasses, which measurably is no error at all. The triangular areas of each of the 4 sides of the pyramid equal the square of the vertical height. The added lengths of the 4 sides of the base bear to the vertical height the same proportion as the radius of a circle to its circumference. What that's saying is that in the orientation of the pyramids, we can relate that to a circle. The earth basically is a circle. This indicates that the Egyptians understood the constant now called pi, 3.1415, because the circle's diameter, the circle's circumference is pi times the diameter, pi d. The length of each side of the base is equal to 365 1/4 sacred cubits, an equivalence of the length of the year in days. The 2 diagonals of the base contain 25,824 pyramid inches, a good approximation of the number of years in the precessional cycle, the great year. That's the time it takes the sun pulling these planets with it to go around through the universe and come back to the same place. That's the basis of what they do that work first before they could design the calendar. That means that they observed the movement of the stars for probably more than 25,000 years to be able to come up to figure out how long an actual year was. I mean, we talked before about taking your time. you know, that takes time. And I would like to think myself, it's just me, I would like to think they probably checked it after that. That'd be another 25,000 years. The granite slab, which was used to measure the Great Pyramid, was housed in a sarcophagus. The length of the granite slab is 1/10,000,000th of the distance of either pole from the center of the earth. That granite slab that was housed in a sarcophagus, there was no body in the sarcophagus, there was a granite slab in there. That slab is 1/10,000,000th of the distance from either pole from the center of the earth. The North Pole from the center of the earth or the South Pole from the center of the earth. That slab is now where?
Is that the meter bar?
It's housed in the Louvre Museum in France. It's now called the meter bar. Exactly. The meter bar, now housed in the Louvre Museum, was the body found in the sarcophagus in the pyramid, and it represents 1/10,000,000th of the distance from either pole to the center of the earth, which meant that they knew how large the earth was. The distance has only recently been verified by modern European and American scientists and demonstrates that the Egyptians knew both that the earth was round and the length of the circumference more than 6,000 years ago. The granite slab is now located in the Louvre Museum in Paris. the 6,000-year-old gift from the African Egyptians is now called the meter bar. Yeah. You caught that, all right. Although possessing no modern drilling tools, the Egyptians were able to drill through solid rock. On the north side of the Great Pyramid is an entrance bored through 350 feet of solid rock at an angle of 26 degrees and 17 minutes to the horizon. The exact angle to view Alpha Draconis in the year 3440. That was their primary pole star 3,400 years ago. And the shaft in the pyramid was drilled to precisely look at that particular spot in the sky.
Well, it's also one book y'all.
They come out of various books. This came off the internet, I think. If you call me, I'll try to find next time. Tell you what I got this very quote.
What did I say? I can't see it.
The Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid. The point of what I'm saying is that, you know, I was given respect for the pyramid as being an old structure on the earth. The average college person does not know today the actual meaning of the pyramid and all the values about the planet itself that are incorporated right there into the pyramid. You know, we see the pyramid as being some figure used in movies about Egypt, you know, with mummies and whatnot. We don't understand that it's a clock, it's a map. You know, it's one of the most precise things on the planet.
Almost like a museum.
Yes. Just like a museum, that's right. Okay, come on.
Relating to the pyramids, a little bit related to it. I had a lady in my cab the other day who was from Egypt and who was a close friend to the former president, Sadat's wife. I forgot her name. She's a close friend of hers. We were talking about Egypt. She said that she understands or she knows that right now as we speak that they're still. She said there's more underground in Egypt
Yes.
now than it is out in the world now. And I said, well, why is that? She said they don't have anywhere to put it. She said as far as the Egypt museum, they're packed.
Yeah.
And she says they haven't figured out where they could put all this. They said, but it's more underground than it is
I wouldn't doubt
that we've discovered already.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. You know, there's still a whole lot of stuff we don't even know. And once again, that's why it's very important that we understand the basis of this stuff and that we begin to organize our minds in the same way that they organize their minds. That stuff will probably not come to the light of day in our lifetime. It might not come to the light of day in our children's lifetime. But if we begin having our people understand that this is information that we must acquire, maybe generations from now, our folks will be able to get that stuff and understand it because they've oriented their minds such that they can now begin to see what was being said years ago. It's not something we can do by tomorrow. You know, we've got to organize our minds and our children's minds to think in a futuristic way. I've told the story on the radio before about the Jews in New York in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were seen to be the most ignorant people in the world. The chief of police went so far to say the Jews were too dumb to go in the Air Force, in the Army. And what Jewish mothers started doing was, at birth, programming their sons, primarily. My son the doctor, my son the lawyer. In 2 generations, they had more doctors and lawyers than any other group. Because they programmed their kids to look down the road. You know, we don't, where's the microphone? Pass it back there while I'm talking. We have not begun as yet programming our folks for what we need. 25 years from now, if black folks acquire more money, somebody went back there and wanted it. If we acquire more money and more things, we most likely will need some accountants to handle our money so we won't be swindled out of it. we'll need some lawyers to watch out after our interest. Jewish, I heard a joke, buddy of mine told me this story. He and a Jewish friend of his had houses in this community, subdivision in New Jersey. And they go and work on their houses every weekend, fix them up for resale. And the Jewish fellow asked him one time, he said, do you know a good black plumber? He said, no, I don't think I do. He said, but let me think about it, see if I can find one for you. He started thinking about that and said, well, this Jewish guy asked me for a black plumber. He went back and asked the guy, said, well, you know, you asked me the other day for a black plumber. I said, why'd you do that? The Jewish guy said, because I don't know a Jewish plumber. In other words, had he knew a Jewish plumber, he wouldn't ask the black guy nothing. We've got to start preparing our folks so we have what we need. If we're going to need accountants, then we need to start programming some of our kids now to be accountants. If we're going to need attorneys that we can count on, we got to start programming some of our kids to become attorneys. If we need doctors who will be willing to take care of us, we got to start programming them to see that as their mission. Other folks have done that, which is why they have their bases covered. They take a long view, and we've been trained to take a very, very short view for the Kaaba.
You know, I was looking at, I look at the white boy, the Jewish boy, Bill Maher's show, and he's in my view, he's racist also, but he does have bring up some good points. Mm-hmm. Bill Maher, he's a comedian. He has a show on HBO. He got kicked off ABC. But anyway, he was talking just this past show, and he was talking about, he's Jewish from New Jersey, and he was talking about the very thing that you just said. He was bringing up, they were talking about something else, and he brought up the fact that, yeah, I'm Jewish, but I was raised also as a Catholic. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. But he said that that's what Jews do. Yeah. He said that Jewish mothers always talk about, you know, my son's going to be a lawyer, he's going to be a doctor, this, that, and the other. So they already put that in their children at a very young age, and that's something to hear them say it. Mm-hmm. You know, but he actually did say it, and I have it on tape. Yeah,
and because, you know, we cannot allow our kids just to float around anymore. Bill Cosby told a joke about his son, you know, wasn't doing very well in school, and he said, asked the son, you know, what's wrong? Son said, I'm trying to find myself. He took him to the mirror, said, there you are right there. There you are, you know, I've solved that problem. I found you, you know. Let's move to the next step now, okay? You know, we've got to start preparing our kids. Our kids have no idea what they could become because we haven't told them. We haven't exposed them very much. You know, it's sad that at this day and age, we have families living in Mitchellville, Maryland, which is a very affluent area, 2 or 3 master's degrees, maybe a PhD in the family. They make a couple $100,000 annual salary, and their kids got their heads wrapped up in rags, pants hanging down, walking around with no direction whatsoever. My son, my youngest son, was watching some rap movies one day, and I asked him, you know, what are those guys preparing for? He said, what do you mean? I said, those young guys who stand out there, you know, around a can, firing it, burning wood, what are they preparing themselves for? He said, I don't know. I said, maybe they're preparing themselves to be old men, standing around a can of fire in a lot somewhere when they're 40 years old. You know, if that's what our preparation is, if that's what we're doing, why don't we see Chinese folk doing that? Japanese folk doing that? Spanish folks, you know. The Academy Awards took place this past week. It's hard, what's the name of the song? It's hard out here for a hoe. For pimp, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We finally win a music award. Now, that's an insult to Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones has written dozens of musical scores. You know, that was not even referenced. You know, it's almost like this the first time black folks have won a music award. You know, it's hard out here for a pimp. The Academy members. Now, most of the Academy members are Jewish.